Breaking news. After a mutiny, it is unclear whether Prigozhin still has a monopoly over the Wagner Group forces that are in Africa peddling Putin's interests. After Wagner Group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin apparently led a mutiny against the Kremlin over the weekend in retaliation for the treatment of his contract fighters, the Wagner Group once again made international headlines. It is unclear what will happen to the mercenary troops doing Russian President Vladimir Putin's bidding in places like Africa and the Middle East, despite the fact that the mutiny was put down before Prigozhin reached Moscow thanks to an ambiguous deal struck by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, who granted safe haven to the Wagner leader and his forces. In exchange for Prigozhin's departure from Russia, Putin allegedly agreed to drop the criminal case opened against him by Moscow's Federal Security Services, FSB, on Saturday morning. Russian media reported on Monday that the case had not been dropped, and concern grew for Prigozhin's safety and the future of his mercenary group. Putin has relied on the group to accomplish goals that Moscow does not want its military involved in. Prigozhin has repeatedly accused the Russian Ministry of Defense of not providing his forces with adequate arms in Ukraine, but the Russian government has denied any connection with the PMC despite numerous UN-level reports showing that Wagner forces have been used to pursue Russian interests abroad. Close allies of Putin in the geopolitical sphere, such as the Central African Republic, CAR, and Mali, have previously denied that the controversial mercenary group accused of human rights abuses was operating within their borders and instead suggested that their militaries had agreements with the Kremlin. However, the recent change in Prigozhin's religious beliefs has left the leaders of these countries concerned about the potential impact on domestic security caused by the ruptured ties between the Wagner chief and Putin. The Africans are asking the same questions we are, trying to understand what the implications are for what happened over the weekend, Cameron Hudson, a senior associate in the Africa program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, told Fox News Digital. Countries benefiting from Wagner's presence need Putin as well. Hudson said that despite Moscow's public distancing from the mercenary group, the two groups' security services are effectively interchangeable in the eyes of the African leadership. Wagner is suspected to have a global reach, operating with as many as 10,000 troops across Angola, the Central African Republic, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea, Madagascar, Libya, Mali, Mozambique, Sudan, Zimbabwe, and possibly Eritrea. Nations that have allowed Wagner forces to operate within their borders have faced backlash for doing so, but they have also received strong support from Russia, a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. This month, Russia backed Mali's efforts to end a UN peacekeeping mission that was established a decade ago to counter the rise of Islamic extremism, providing an example of this geopolitical support. The foreign minister of Mali addressed the United Nations Security Council and said the mission had become a part of the problem in fueling intercommunal tensions. Wagner mercenaries have been accused of human rights abuses and provocation, but they have been allowed to stay and aid Mali's military goals. Wagner's presence in Africa is evidenced by this alliance, which has strained diplomatic ties between the involved countries. They need Putin for the kind of high-level political cover that he can give them in New York and globally, Hudson explained. They require the constant protection that Wagner offers. The expert explained that it would be beneficial for Moscow and its African allies if Russia could find a way to successfully take over Wagner's operations, but that the Kremlin's ability to do so remains questionable. Hudson continued, "I'm assuming this isn't over," referring to the Wagner-Putin dispute. Wagner provides a service that Moscow is lacking at the moment. Wagner has established contacts, creating a web of formal and informal trade. So, I think the question is, if Prigozhin were to be replaced or removed, could the Kremlin co-opt Wagner? In his words. According to one Wagner expert, Prigozhin now has the upper hand in protecting Putin's interests in Africa because of this predicament. Wagner operations are not just a business where security services are performed for cash, according to Alexander Kovalenko, military supervisor of the Information Resistance Group in Ukraine. which began countering propaganda after Russia's invasion of the Crimean Peninsula in 2014. Russia's long-term interests, especially as relations with the West have collapsed following Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year, lie in its ability to gain access to the natural resources available across Africa. Kovalenko argued that, for Russia, control over its external colonies is very important. Therefore, the Wagnerites will not be relocated or replaced anywhere in Africa. The Russian government does not employ any alternative private military firm in Africa capable of replacing the Wagnerites. Prigozhin has a monopoly in this matter, he elaborated. Putin's biggest challenge is dealing with the head of Russia's top mercenary network, which has global influence. Kovalenko claimed, the Russian leadership has no answer to this problem.